The courtroom felt like an icebox, far colder than I'd ever want in that moment. As soon as the judge's gavel struck, my almost ex-wife leaned back in her chair, smirking like she thought she had this wrapped up. She crossed her legs, the heels of her fancy shoes making a soft click on the polished floor. "Your Honor," she said, running a manicured finger along her cheek, "let's be real here. My husband," she glanced at me with disdain, "is dependable, predictable, like a good old workhorse, easy to control." The room broke into a few whispers. Even a low chuckle came from her lawyer. The judge didn't even flinch, tapping his gavel again to quiet things down. I clenched my jaw and kept calm. She was on stage, and I wasn't about to lose it and give her the satisfaction she craved. She'd started all this divorce drama after all. 8 years together, and I guess I was too mundane for her, not the adventure she thought she was owed. Rather than leave quietly, she dragged me into court, eager to humiliate me on her way out. She'd already taken the house I'd built with my own two hands. She'd fought tooth and nail for half of my business too, despite having no part in it. Here we were, at the last hearing, and she just kept twisting the knife. Her new guy lounged in the back, looking amused and unconcerned. A slick, polished corporate lawyer, the kind she decided she needed. She hadn't even bothered to hide it when I caught them in our bed. Sheets bought with my hard-earned money. But I wasn't going to fall apart. What she didn't get was this trial wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Her lawyer, a smug guy in an overpriced suit, played with his tie while he spoke. "Your Honor, my client just wants to ensure Mr. Hayes can meet his alimony obligations over the long haul. She made significant lifestyle sacrifices during the marriage, and she deserves compensation." Sacrifices? That was a stretch. Judge Reynolds adjusted his glasses, looking at me. "Mr. Hayes, your response?" I took a deep breath, holding on to the table, knowing this was my moment. Slowly, I unbuttoned my dress shirt. The room fell silent. Even the judge leaned in, curious. I took my time, unbuttoning each one with care, then let the shirt drop. The courtroom erupted in gasps. My wife's grin vanished. Her boyfriend's smirk melted into worry. In front of them was a different man than the one she'd ridiculed. I used to be soft, comfortable, focusing on work and family above everything else, even myself. Easy to cheat on, easy to overlook. But not anymore. I was changed, strong and solid. I'd spent months in the gym, turning stress into muscle and self-assurance. Every scar on my chest told a story of struggle and victory. Most noticeable was a fresh tattoo by my heart, showing a workhorse breaking free from its chains, completely deliberate, undeniable. My wife's eyes widened, her jaw dropped as she stared. Her lawyer tried to regain his composure. "Your Honor, I don't see how this is relevant," I interrupted, my voice firm and unyielding. "You want to talk sacrifices?" I turned toward the judge. "For 8 years, I gave it everything. Worked overtime so she could find herself, indulged her whims and travel dreams, invested my all with trust, treated her like my equal." I turned back to my wife, watching as her complexion paled. "And what did I get in return?" I gestured toward the man in the back row. The room buzzed with murmurs again. Her lawyer tried to jump in, but I wasn't finished. Judge Reynolds held up a hand, calling for silence, and I nodded my thanks before continuing. "You called me a workhorse, huh?" I said, a slow grin spreading across my face. "Well, this workhorse is ready to run you over." Her face twisted, panic flashing in her eyes. I picked up a thick manila envelope from my chair and dropped it on the table with a satisfying thud. "Inside this file," I said, my voice clear and unwavering, "are documents proving you've been committing financial fraud, stashing money away and charging personal expenses to my business." Her jaw dropped, then snapped shut, only to fall open once more. "Because of this," I continued, "I'm not only canceling your alimony request, but I'm also suing you for damages." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Her lawyer scrambled through his papers, visibly thrown off, while she sat there in total shock, her previous air of confidence nowhere to be seen. For months, she'd only shown me arrogance and smug satisfaction, but now I saw fear, and this was just the beginning. As my words hung heavy in the air, my soon-to-be ex-wife gripped the defense table so hard her fingertips turned white against the polished surface. The haughty facade she wore so well was disintegrating, replaced by genuine panic. Her attorney, usually so sure and smooth-talking, was disarrayed, hastily flipping through his notes, completely blindsided by the storm I'd set off. "Your Honor," he stuttered out, nervously tugging at his collar, I, I'd like to request a brief pause to review these." Judge Reynolds cut him off with a raised hand. "Hold on there," he said, turning his gaze my way. "Mr. Hayes, are you really standing here claiming Mrs. Hayes engaged in financial fraud?" I kept my cool exterior, though my heart pounded in my chest. "Yes, Your Honor. Concrete evidence." I unfolded the envelope, displaying a slew of bank statements, phony expense reports, and hidden credit card transactions, all tying back to her. It had taken countless late nights to piece it all together. Her infidelity didn't just tick me off, it sharpened my resolve. I wasn't prepared to leave empty-handed after everything she'd put me through. So I took a page out of her playbook and beat her at it. I brought in a forensic accountant, an expert at sniffing out financial trickery, and what they found was jaw-dropping. She didn't just take, she funneled cash from our accounts, masking it as business spending. Romantic getaways with her lover masqueraded as client meetings, a designer wardrobe passed off as work attire, even a lease on an apartment, probably her planned escape with all our money. The kicker? Every paper had her signature. Judge Reynolds sifted through the files, keeping his emotions in check, but I caught the slight twitch of his brow. "Mrs. Hayes," he finally spoke, looking at her over his glasses. "Do you have any explanation for these documents?" My gaze met hers, steady and calm. I'd seen her lie with ease many times before, but now she was floundering. "I can't believe this," she stammered, her laugh more nervous tick than humor. "He's making it all up. I wouldn't—" "Your Honor," I cut in smoothly, "her signature is on each fraudulent entry." I slid another document forward. "Here's an email where she instructs her accountant to shift funds from our business into her own account." The color drained from her face. This was the moment I'd been building towards. She leaned in, barely audible. "You hacked my email." I kept my poker face. "No," I replied. "I reviewed business communications from my own company, the same one you attempted to steal from." Judge Reynolds exhaled, clearly irritated. "Mrs. Hayes, these are grave allegations. Your attorney will have the opportunity to respond, but in the meantime, I need to give these financial claims my full attention before making any decision on alimony." Her lawyer's words tumbled out in a rush, a palpable desperation driving his frantic briefing search for an escape. But this time, there was none. For once, she wasn't at the helm, and I was far from done. Her boyfriend was next. Casting a glance back, I caught her new guy, an arrogant corporate lawyer who'd earlier enjoyed my discomfort. Not anymore. Now he was as stiff as a board, fingers nervously tapping his leg. Our eyes met, and I offered a slow, deliberate grin. Time to reel him in too. "Your Honor," I told the court, standing up, "there's one last thing I need to introduce before we proceed." Judge Reynolds gestured for me to continue. I reached into my pocket, withdrawing a tiny USB drive. "This," I said, "is a collection of recordings of conversations between Mrs. Hayes and Mr. Brooks." I pointed to the lawyer, who now looked as pale as a ghost. In those talks, they plotted to clean me out before her official exit. My wife's head whipped towards me almost fast enough to give her whiplash. "What?" she shrieked. "That's not legal. He can't just record private talks." Looking over at the judge, I said, "Judge, these recordings happened at my house, and in our state, it's legal if one person consents." Judge Reynolds raised an eyebrow and signaled for the bailiff to grab the USB stick. "Let's get this checked out," he remarked. "If it reveals what you claim, Mr. Hayes, this won't just be a straightforward divorce case." Her boyfriend went pale, and it hit me. He had no clue she was planning to pull him down with her. Perfect. I leaned toward my wife, murmuring just loud enough for her to catch. "You thought you had me fooled, but you fooled yourself instead." Her jaw tightened so much I swear I heard her teeth grinding. I wasn't just a workhorse now. I was the guy who just wrecked her plans. The judge deeply exhaled, saying, "I'm not making any decisions until I go over all the financial documents and evidence given the seriousness here. For now, everything stays frozen." She turned sharply toward him, shocked. "Frozen? she barely managed to say. Yes, Judge Reynolds answered plainly. You can't touch any bank accounts, business shares, or joint assets until it's sorted. Her hands shook. She turned to her lawyer, hissing, "Do something." But he just rubbed his temples, resigned. I settled back in my seat, cool and composed, seeing reality hit her like a brick wall. Her dream of leaving this court wealthy and victorious had gone up in smoke. And her boyfriend, already checking his watch, clearly wanting out of this mess. With a smirk, I knew he wouldn't hang around long. She was about to realize how quickly guys bail when the money disappears. But that's her issue now. For the first time in forever, I felt like I was already ahead. Watching her, I could hear her panic, her well-maintained facade crumbling in court. The judge freezing her assets sent her into chaos, her careful plans unraveling fast. But stopping wasn't in my plan. As her lawyer fumbled through talks about revisiting evidence and finances, I focused on the man who played a part in ruining my marriage, her lawyer boyfriend. The same one who enjoyed watching me squirm at the start now looked like he wished he could melt away. I leaned back, giving him a smug grin, pushing the point home. Judge, I kept my tone steady. Before we take a break, I have another request tied to the financial fraud probe. Judge Reynolds looked over his glasses. Go on, Mr. Hayes. I directed my attention straight at her boyfriend. According to documents, Mr. Brooks here is linked to several sketchy transactions. His head snapped toward me. What? He yelped, sounding a bit too panicked. I could almost see sweat forming on his forehead. Judge Reynolds flipped through the papers before fixing his sight on Brooks. Mr. Brooks, care to explain why your name's popping up in these financial records? My ex turned to him, eyes wide in shock. She didn't see this coming at all. He stood there paralyzed, realizing he'd been tossed into her mess. But like a typical greedy fool, he didn't ask enough questions. Judge, I have no idea what he's talking about, Brooks mumbled uncertainly. I couldn't help but chuckle. Is that so? I said, leaning in. These records show several payments to an account under your name, including, I continued, picking up another piece of evidence, a hefty consultation fee for legal services. Judge Reynolds shot him a questioning glance. Is that true, Mr. Brooks? Brooks floundered, opening and closing his mouth like a fish gasping for air. I don't handle personal finances, he weakly argued. I chuckled to myself, knowing this trap was solid. The evidence was clear as day. That guy had taken money from my wife, probably thinking it was some smart move in their divorce game. But now? Now it seemed like he was tangled up in a financial scandal, and for a lawyer, that's career suicide. I watched the moment it dawned on him. He turned to my wife, not with love or trust, but with sheer betrayal written all over his face. Jessica, he spat, his voice shaking with fury. What's going on here? She shook her head frantically, trying to backtrack. Hold on. It's not what you think. I just had to shift some funds around, you know? Her voice faded away. Judge Reynolds let out a long sigh. I'll be ordering a full audit of both financial records. And Mr. Brooks, if you're caught up in this, you'll face the music too. Brooks shot up from his seat. This is ridiculous. I won't, he started, but the judge cut him off harshly. Sit down, Mr. Brooks, or I'll hold you in contempt. Brooks stiffened, realizing his whole career was hanging by a thread. And Jessica? She finally realized the extent of what I'd done. Her money gone, her assets seized, and the guy she thought was her ticket to a better life was ready to run. I leaned back, feeling steady and calm, knowing the game was over. Her plans had just gone up in flames. After about 15 minutes, during a recess called by the judge, I watched my soon-to-be ex-wife clinging to Brooks, pleading desperately. Honey, please, you know I wouldn't do this to you. Her voice quivered. It's just business stuff. We can work it out. Brooks pulled back, hissing, You fool, do you even understand what you've done? Her eyes blinked quickly, tears about to spill. You promised we'd be together, she said softly. I said a lot of things, Brooks grumbled, ruffling his hair like he was fighting off nausea. I never wanted to get caught in a fraud mess. I stood up, adjusted my suit, and strolled past them. As I did, I leaned close and whispered, Looks like you played your cards too soon, darling. She turned toward me with fiery eyes. Think you've won? She barked, her voice shaky. Think this makes you a man? I smiled, a cool, confident smile. No, I said as I put on my jacket. It makes me free. And I walked away, leaving her standing there shattered, with no money, no power, and no one to rescue her. The result was like poetic justice. About a week later, a message from an unknown number popped up. I checked it. Jessica. I made a mistake. Please, I just want to talk. We can fix this. I laughed, not with bitterness or rage, but with a sense of liberation. I deleted the message without a second glance. There wasn't anything more to say. In getting rid of Jessica's message, something shifted in me. For the first time in ages, I felt light as a feather, free of any chains. The woman who once held the strings in my life meant nothing now. Just a name on a court paper, a tough lesson learned, but her downfall wasn't finished. While I stood free, she faced losses everywhere. The fallout was public humiliation. The weeks that followed were a disaster for Jessica. The financial audit got underway, and the court dug deep into her shady dealings. The evidence was rock solid. She had stolen from our business, hidden money away in secret accounts, blatantly embezzled. She wasn't just losing alimony, she was looking at criminal charges. And then came the breakup that everyone saw coming. I knew Brooks would want out, but even I was surprised how fast he bailed after the hearing. Just 3 days later, his law firm publicly cut ties with him. Up till the data cutoff in October 2023, here's how it all went down. Brooks's boss dropped the axe, saying their firm didn't tolerate any dodgy dealings. Before they could officially fire him, Brooks quit on his own. And Jessica? Poor girl got left out in the cold, all alone, broke, and with her reputation in shambles. I had this hunch she'd try one last time to mend things between us. Sure enough, one evening, just as I was cooling down from a home workout, I heard a knock at my door. It was a solid knock but carried a hint of hesitation. I thought about ignoring it, but then curiosity got the best of me. I opened the door, and there she was, Jessica Hayes. She used to be my wife, but these days she seemed more like a faded version of herself. She was putting effort into her appearance, but her eyes told a different story. They were full of desperation. Her makeup was overdone, like she was hiding behind it, trying to mask her unhappiness. The fancy jewelry she used to show off? Nowhere to be seen, probably pawned for some quick cash. Her voice was softer than I remembered when she spoke. "Hey," she said with a weak attempt at a smile. "Can we talk?" I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, trying to play cool. "Talk about what?" I asked, keeping my tone flat. She shifted uncomfortably, letting out a nervous laugh. "Look, I know things got messy between us, and we didn't always agree." I kept quiet, waiting for her to continue. "I miss you," she admitted. I raised an eyebrow. "Do you?" She swallowed hard. "Yeah, I mean, we had some good times and I really messed up, didn't I?" I said nothing, letting the uncomfortable silence stretch between us. Her facade crumbled as she fidgeted. "Can you stop acting so smug for a moment? I'm actually trying here," she snapped, her voice revealing the real Jessica, the one who once tried to destroy me in court, mock my loyalty, my simplicity. And now she was back, looking for a way in. I tilted my head. "It's not me you miss. It's the life I gave you." Her mouth opened to protest, but she knew I was right. "I have nothing left," she admitted, her voice breaking. "No money, no one to turn to. I just need a bit of help to get back on my feet." I almost laughed at her audacity, but decided against it. Instead, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my wallet, and handed her a single-dollar bill. She looked stunned. "What's this supposed to be?" she snapped. I gave her a smirk. "Think of it as my last gesture of kindness." Her face flushed with embarrassment. She barely managed a, "You son of a," before I closed the door on her. And just like that, Jessica Hayes was out of my life for good.